present, ahead of an earthquake, and a zillion examples of where sunspots were present and no earthquakes occurred. For instance, huge sunspots in history, with no quakes associated. Huge tsunami in history, with no associated earthquakes. Since solar activity is cyclic, it should have no long-term impact on climate. 4. In order to do this, the sun should have contracted notable cooling, at least several times, then warming up again, which we know it did that. A study published in Nature, in September 2006, suggests that evidence is solidly on the side of solar brightness, having relatively little effect on global climate. Solar variations do not play a major role in present-day observed climate change. IPCC Third Assessment Report. A paper by Bennestead and Schmidt concludes that the most likely contribution to global warming from solar forcing is 7 to 1% for the 20th century, and is negligible for warming since 1980. Nud Lassen and astrophysicist Peter Thiel found that solar cycle fails to explain a 0.4 Celsius degree temperature rise since 1980s. The curves diverge after 1980, and it's a startlingly large deviation. All the while, satellite observations show no increasing trend in solar output. Something else is acting on the climate. The apparent strong correlations displayed on these graphs have been obtained by incorrect handling of the physical data. These graphs are still widely referred to in the literature, and their misleading character has not yet been generally recognized. Damon and Lott report, in EOS. Physicist and historian Spencer R. Weir, in The Discovery of Global Warming, 2003, writes, "The study of sunspot cycles was generally popular through the first half of the century. Governments had collected a lot of weather data to play with, and inevitably, people found correlations between sunspot cycles and select weather patterns. If rainfall in England didn't fit the cycle, maybe storminess in New England would. Respected scientists and enthusiastic amateurs insisted they had found patterns reliable enough to make predictions. Sooner or later, though, every prediction failed. An example was a highly credible forecast of a dry spell in Africa during the sunspot minimum of the early 1930s. When the period turned out to be wet, a meteorologist later recalled, the subject of sunspots and weather relationships fell into dispute. Solar flares, an extended or anomalous solar cycle, has been planned for decades to be used as a cover for the Earth changes caused by Planet X. Planet X, and its presence between the Earth and the Sun, is not causing any additional solar activity other than ruffles on the Sun's surface. The only additional activity is in the reporting. Those who would shield the populace from the truth will say otherwise, declaring that this is the cause of the increasing Earth changes. And many buy into it. Nothing has changed. In ancient times solar eclipse was blamed for all sorts of bad things. Solar flares is not something that common man on the face of Earth can recognize, thus can be made up freely as disinfo. There is no data in the hands of the public, not released from the control of NASA. They control the SOHO satellite. The archives of past images can shut down the satellite for days, giving whatever excuse they choose, and the public cannot call them to account on any of it. They can manufacture an event, or fail to report a real event. The Sun usually operates on an 11-year cycle, with maximum activity occurring in the middle of the cycle. The last cycle reached its peak in 2001. 2005 and 2006 were the years of solar minimum. The next cycle was expected to reach its peak sometime around 2012. Thus, merely anticipating an active sunspot cycle, NASA was preparing to point to the Sun as a reason for climate anomalies, increased seismic and volcanic activity. Nearly 18 months after the official start of solar cycle 24, observers are looking closely at the ball of hot plasma in the sky asking, what is wrong with the Sun? For some reason, the usual cycle of 11 years, from peak to trough, from solar maximum to solar minimum, has been interrupted. Right now, the solar activity is in a valley, the deepest solar minimum in nearly a century. At a time when solar activity should be picking up, on its way to the solar maximum, the Sun is oddly quiescent. Although periods of inactivity are normal for the Sun, this current period has gone on much longer than usual. The Sun has gone more than 2 years without a significant solar flare. In 2008 and 2009, the Sun has set space-age records for low sunspot counts, weak solar wind, and low solar irradiance. NOAA now predicts that the solar maximum will peak in 2013, not 2012, and that it will probably be fairly weak. Moreover, there is no agreement among scientists as to the direction of solar activity's effect on the Earth's climate. In previous years, scientists generally agreed that increasing solar activity could be causing warming on Earth. Come 2009, it became obvious that solar activity is below what would be expected. NSO has been measuring the sunspot magnetic fields for the past decades, and found a remarkable trend: sunspot magnetism is on the decline. Solar irradiance began to drop in the 1990s. Over the past 20 years, all the trends in the Sun that could have had an influence on the Earth climate have been in the opposite direction to that required to explain the observed rise in global mean temperatures. And so, now it is speculated that either we could expect another ice age, or that it is the decreasing solar activity that is causing the warming. Where alternative explanations are floated out, the establishment knows that the educated man won't buy into this. For those logical thinkers, reading broadly in the news and on the internet, other stories are given. Invent something science-like, and abstract, like a galactic gravitational pull, something that cannot be proven or disproved, something merely a theory, but put forth by authoritative men, stating assumptions as fact. It is all clothed in scientific mumbo-jumbo that the common man doesn't even try to fully understand. Planets stretching in a straight line, on one side of the Sun, are supposed to cause something devastating to Earth? There's no special forces when planets align, and it has no scientific value. It's sort of curiosity. Do not the ice-laden poles continue to build up mass, until the Earth tips out of balance? Does not ice melt in Greenland and Antarctic ice caps, and resulting flow of meltwater, change the distribution of Earth's mass, causing its rotational axis to shift angle? A simple estimate shows that land masses of major continents, piled up on one side of the globe, far outweigh the other side of the Earth's surface, where waters pool in low areas. Do these inequities cause pole shift today? Is it drag, rotation slowing due to extra man-made lakes around the equator, that silly argument put forth to explain the increasing slowdown in rotation? Is it more wind turbines built that is disrupting and changing the direction of the winds? Human hands are causing the changes, HARP, or secret weapons that can focus earthquakes under enemy lands, or foment weather disturbances, such is the latest rumor. Man, of course, does not have any ability to create earthquakes, or control the weather, as observation of the path and destruction of hurricanes and typhoons would show. These cannot be stopped, nor can man even predict them. Rising carbon dioxide levels will cause changes in ocean and atmospheric currents, weakening atmospheric pressure, which will supposedly lead to a slight rise in the level of both land and the sea, causing the Earth to rotate slower around its axis. Scientists of Belgian Royal Observatory argue, as reported by Geophysical Research Letters magazine. Every 64 million years, the solar system's cyclical travels, reportedly, take us through the center to above the Milky Way's galactic plane, where we become exposed to many cosmic rays, which supposedly correlates with mass extinctions on Earth, every 62 million years or so. Now, listen to this. Changes are caused by solar systems' passage through special areas of galactic space, which is why we feel influence of other systems nearby. Connected to this phenomena could be, it is theorized, a significant change in worldwide weather conditions, people feeling dizzy and fatigued, and also plane and train crashes, that became more frequent as of late. If warming of the Earth will accelerate, we may be threatened by an ice age, some scientists fear. masses of cold meltwater will cool down the ocean, which will lead to cooling in the northern hemisphere. Geologists are now gathering data in an attempt to understand how global warming will affect geological activity, reports Natural News. They say, as the planet warms up, the resulting melted ice won't just raise sea levels, it will also uncap volcanoes. Climate change is not just the atmosphere and hydrosphere. It's the geosphere as well. Bill Maguire, the Eoin Benfield, UCL Hazard Research Centre, at University College, London. NASA explains the Earth's reactions to strong quakes in Sumatra, in 2004, and Chile, in 2010, such that quake resulted in a slowing rotation. The quake caused the orbit and rotation of the Earth to change. The question to be asked then, is, what caused the earthquake? Is it the orbit changes, gravitational influences of other planetary bodies, which might cause the planet to tilt, and its axis to shift? Perturbations in the orbit, due to gravity pull, but not a tilt, per human astrophysics. These silly arguments are given weight, only because the true cause of pole shifts, the 12th planet, is out of sight between the cataclysms, and generally forgotten. Humans, schooled into deadthink, had no way to explain current changes, without being open-minded and exploratory, those attributes that get them punished, in their autocratic schools. The Earth's core can, and does, move in its molten mush, during the passage of another planet with a strong magnetic field, without affecting the orbit. Thus, we have wandering poles. Magnetic fields pointing in all directions in frozen lava. And crust shifting bringing mammoths into the polar circle, with green grass in their stomachs, flash frozen, to be discovered and pondered over by the modern man. And thus, during the close approach of this planet, that is heading toward Earth, we have a swirling core, heating the Earth from the bottom up, causing polar and glacial melt, and magnetic diffusion. The approaching passage, and its effect on Earth, explains these phenomena. But the establishment is quick to point out, that at some time in the past, there was such a drought, such a storm, or such a warm day in winter, or a cold day in summer. They are, in this, seeking to diminish the reaction by the populace, that weather has gotten extreme, which it has, even within the memory of man. A current theory, is that there are periodic climate changes, cycles, and this is one of them. The increasing incidence of earthquakes, are also claimed to be periodic cycles, with ancient legends to support the cycle theory, or improved reporting mechanisms, implying that quakes were not recorded properly in the past. What would perturb the Earth, with such regularity, almost like a heartbeat? Except for this problem, question, is a no-issue. Since this graph, seeming to align so very perfectly with their theory, has no basis in reality whatsoever. Data is being dredged forth, newly interpreted, supporting this, with the reassurance that these times will pass, as they have in the past. But nature does not cooperate with man's theories this way. Earth changes are not only not reducing, they are proceeding faster than the models predicted. We are basically looking now at a future climate that's beyond anything we've considered seriously in climate model simulations. Christopher Field, founding director of the Carnegie Institution's Department of Global Ecology, at Stanford University. A 50-year study found that world's mountain and polar glaciers are melting at a rapid and alarming rate, faster than anyone predicted just a few years ago. And melting is accelerating. 2002, by 2015, snows of Kilimanjaro will disappear, by 2020, for sure. 2005. The snows of Kilimanjaro do not exist anymore. Close to 85% of the ice that made up the mountaintop Kilimanjaro glaciers in 1912 was gone by 2007. Glaciers in the Himalayas are melting at a rate of 9 to 15 meters per year, having shrinked by 16% in the last 50 years. Around the North Pole, The ice cap has lost 40% of its surface area in the last 30 years, since 1979.